It is exactly 2 in the morning. The house is settled into a heavy, suffocating silence. You are staring straight up at the dark ceiling, doing that devastatingly familiar mental math. You calculate that if you manage to fall asleep right this very second, you can still get exactly 4 hours and 12 minutes of rest. You actively begin negotiating with your own biology, like a desperate hostage negotiator standing outside a locked door. You make a solemn internal promise that if your brain just powers down immediately, you will drink a massive coffee tomorrow and somehow survive the crushing demands of the coming day. You roll onto your left side, then you flip the pillow to find the temporary, fleeting relief of the cool edge. You squeeze your burning eyes shut, but your mind has already opened 97 separate browser tabs, and not a single one of them has any intention of closing. A random song from 11 years ago is playing on a relentless, merciless loop. Another tab is obsessively replaying a perfectly normal conversation from last Tuesday, forensically searching every syllable for hidden insults. A third tab is suddenly, urgently concerned about a financial decision you do not even need to make until next month. A fourth tab is replaying an embarrassing thing you said at a party in 2018 that literally nobody else even remembers. And somewhere in the background, a fifth tab is quietly generating a long, unstructured list of every possible thing that could go wrong with your entire life in the next decade. Most people assume this specific, painful experience means their internal clock is completely broken. They lie in the dark, convinced their inability to drift off is a massive biological failure. They believe a brain that refuses to rest when the body is physically exhausted is fundamentally defective. They feel ashamed. They feel uniquely and entirely alone in this. What if the objective scientific truth is far more complex, far more ancient, and far more practical than a simple malfunction? What if your stubborn, infuriating refusal to sleep starts as a brilliant evolutionary mechanism, but quickly morphs into a devastating modern psychological trap? Tonight, we are going to look closely and honestly at what actually happens when a person is left entirely alone with their unfiltered mind in the dark. We will uncover the hidden reason your vigilant nervous system waits until the entire world goes quiet to turn its volume all the way up. We will trace the exact biological engine driving this exhausting behavior. And once you finally understand how your sensitive mind is confusing a modern emotional problem with an ancient physical threat, you will permanently change how you navigate your next sleepless night. Not with brute force, not with frustration, but with something far more powerful, genuine understanding. Let us start with the literal physical cost of this nocturnal wrestling match, because the price you pay for an active night mind is devastatingly real and should never be falsely romanticized. When your racing thoughts stubbornly refuse to stop, your daytime cognitive function takes a direct, immediate hit. You wake up with a thick, gray fog sitting right behind your eyes, as though someone filled your skull with wet concrete overnight. The morning alarm sounds like a physical assault. Every sound in those first waking moments feels amplified and aggressive and wrong. You drag yourself out of bed using nothing but sheer willpower, put on a convincing mask of functional competence for the professional world, and spend the entire day moving through thick, suffocating mud. It takes you 3 times longer to write a simple work email. You read the same sentence 4 consecutive times without absorbing a word. You lose your train of thought mid-sentence while talking to someone you care about. Pretend it was nothing. It was not nothing. It was your exhausted brain quietly dropping pieces of itself on the floor. Researchers who study cognitive performance consistently note that missing just a few critical hours of deep sleep mimics the measurable effects of a significant drop in baseline cognitive function. Your working memory shrinks, your reaction time collapses, your ability to regulate your own emotions evaporates by mid-afternoon. You snap at the people you love over completely insignificant things, then feel immediate shame about it. The brutal irony is complete. The mind that refuses to rest is slowly dismantling the very daytime life it is so anxiously trying to protect at 3 in the morning. So why would a sophisticated, capable mind continuously force you into a destructive pattern that makes you temporarily less capable of handling the very problems it is rehearsing in the dark? To understand the terrifying night, you first have to understand what actually happens during the loud, relentless day. During daylight hours, your brain operates in a constant state of defensive emergency management. From the second your alarm sounds, you're bombarded with complex, overlapping demands. You read your boss's tone to determine whether the morning is going well or about to collapse. You monitor your family's expressions to take the invisible temperature of the house. You smile when you are not happy, you nod when you fundamentally disagree. You suppress your authentic reactions again and again to maintain the social contracts that keep your life functional. Every single time you swallow a sharp, genuine emotion to keep the peace, you accumulate massive, hidden emotional debt. Your mind receives and registers all of this data, but has no quiet, safe space to process any of it. It frantically files everything in a crowded mental waiting room with a sign that reads, "We will deal with this later." You actively assist this daily avoidance process because feeling the full weight of everything in real time would be overwhelming. You listen to podcasts during your commute, so silence cannot create space for uncomfortable feelings. You scroll through videos at lunch to prevent any genuine internal stillness. You're constantly consuming external stimulation precisely to avoid sitting alone with your authentic self. Your brain is surviving the daily gauntlet. But it is never, not once, actually digesting the accumulated emotional weight of your experience. And then the night comes, the screens go dark, the noise stops, and your mind, finally alone with itself, makes a decision. Now we process everything you have been avoiding all day. Before we even reach the involuntary midnight awakening, most of us actively set a specific biological trap for ourselves. Behavioral scientists call this phenomenon revenge bedtime procrastination, and the name tells you everything about the emotional logic driving it. Your evening unfolds predictably. You finish working and commuting and caring for everyone else who needed something from you. It is 10 o'clock and your eyes are burning, but instead of turning off the light, you sit on the couch and stare at your phone for another 2 hours. You scroll through content you will not remember. You check your messages for the 4th time, even though nothing important has arrived since the 3rd time. You do this because your sense of personal autonomy was systematically stolen from you all day. Every hour was dictated by external demands, other people's schedules, other people's needs. Going to sleep feels like surrender because sleeping means waking up and beginning the entire cycle of obligation all over again. So you steal back the night. You delay your rest to feel a small, fleeting, entirely private sense of ownership over your own time. This procrastination feels like self-care, but it is the gateway into the nightmare. While you stare at that bright screen clutching your stolen time, you're steadily pushing your exhausted body past its natural sleep window. You are driving your nervous system from healthy, recoverable fatigue directly into a state of severe chemical hyperarousal. The two states feel superficially similar, but are biologically opposite. Healthy fatigue makes you drift off easily. Hyperarousal makes sleep feel chemically impossible, even when physical exhaustion is overwhelming. When you finally turn the screen off and pull the blankets up, the emotional debt collector arrives precisely on time. The psychology of sleep tells us that the human brain requires a guarantee of total safety and complete quiet to organize its deepest unresolved material. When the distractions stop, your brain looks around the dark room, registers the absence of immediate threats, decides the moment has finally arrived to unpack the heavy emotional boxes stacked in that waiting room. Thousands of years ago, human beings lived in small, vulnerable tribes in genuinely dangerous wilderness. The entire group could not safely fall unconscious simultaneously. Somebody had to remain vigilant enough to check the perimeter. Evolutionary biologists call this the sentinel hypothesis. A certain percentage of the population is hardwired to spontaneously wake in the deepest part of the night, their nervous systems engineered to scan for physical danger. That brief awakening, that sharp moment when your eyes open in the quiet dark to listen, is the ancient sentinel doing precisely what it was designed to do. In the modern world, there are no predators outside your window. But your ancient nervous system still wakes you up. The radar activates, sweeps the quiet room, finds nothing, and then turns its full power entirely inward. It starts hunting for emotional predators instead. Your internal radar begins aggressively scanning your memory for unresolved threats, treating every unprocessed emotional experience as a potential emergency. It pulls up that ambiguous look from your coworker this morning and classifies it with the same urgency as a venomous snake in the grass. It surfaces that embarrassing moment from 5 years ago and forces you to experience the same visceral shame right now in this dark, safe, completely empty room. Clinical psychologists call this fear extinction failure. For a healthy sleeper, the quiet bedroom sends a clear signal that today's accumulated fear can be released. For the hypervigilant mind, the silence amplifies the internal alarm. The total absence of external threat paradoxically feels, to the ancient nervous system, like the suffocating stillness before a violent ambush. When this internal wrestling match fully engages, your sensory awareness becomes bizarrely heightened. Your heartbeat becomes a wet metronome in the dark. You feel the fabric of the sheets in a way that seems overwhelming. Your adrenal glands release a precise cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline, not enough to make you flee, but just enough to keep your eyelids bolted open against every law of physical fatigue. You're pressing the accelerator and the emergency brake to the floor simultaneously, and the engine screams at full power without moving an inch. In the deep middle of the night, time stops behaving like a forward-moving line. A single minute stretches into a torturous hour. You close your eyes, follow a runaway train of thought deep into an emotional rabbit hole, and when you finally check the clock, only 4 minutes have passed in the real world. Unmoored from chronological time, the mind slides violently backward. You do not vaguely remember your past. You biologically relive it in high definition. You suddenly smell the specific perfume of someone you deeply loved a decade ago. You mourn the invisible paths of choices you did not make. The boundaries between past, present, and imagined future collapse entirely. A mistake from 7 years ago carries the same sharp sting as something that happened this morning. You hold the entire accumulated weight of your complete life story all at once, in the dark, completely alone. As the night drags forward, the physical fatigue systematically dismantles your last rational defenses. Problems that seemed solvable at noon have become insurmountable. Catastrophes by 3 in the morning. The mind projects relentlessly into an unknown future, constructing elaborate worst-case scenarios for your career, your relationships, your health. Anxiety thrives in darkness because it has no rational competition, no sunlight or movement or grounded external perspective to pull you back to objective reality. Eventually, even anxiety exhausts itself. When the manic panic fades, it leaves something much heavier behind, a hollow, ancient ache in the center of the chest. A specific quality of sadness that exists only in these precise hours before dawn. Researchers who study mood disorders note that the window between 3 and 4 in the morning carries a disproportionate weight of depression and despair. It is not ordinary sadness. It is a vast, echoing emptiness, the suffocating recognition that you are fully awake and entirely alone while the world moves forward without noticing your absence. There are no masks left at this hour. Only the raw, unprotected truth of how you actually feel about your life, and your desperate brain, trying to escape this crushing weight, attempts one final maneuver. It projects you violently into an idealized future. This is why the most sweeping, impossible life plans are conceived at 3:30 in the morning with burning eyes and a racing heart. You firmly decide that tomorrow everything changes. You will wake at 5, run before sunrise, finally make the bold professional move you have been postponing for 3 years. You will become overnight the fully alive version of yourself you know is waiting somewhere inside you. This midnight motivation is entirely real in the moment. It is also entirely fragile, because it is not built from genuine energy or resolve. It is built from the desperate need to believe that the pain of now will be transformed by the person you become tomorrow. When the alarm rings 4 hours later, the vision dissolves like fog in morning light, leaving only the leaden weight of another sleep-deprived body in a rumpled bed. Now we must speak, carefully and honestly, about what actually changes this cycle. The most empirically validated approach to chronic sleep disruption is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and at its foundation is one radical idea. You cannot think your way out of a conditioned biological response. You must take physical action to break the pattern. The first and most counterintuitive tool is called stimulus control. Over months and years of chronic sleeplessness, you have accidentally trained your nervous system to associate the physical bed with threat and anxiety. The mattress has literally become the cue for cortisol release. Breaking this association requires a strict behavioral rule. If you have been lying awake for approximately 20 minutes and your mind has begun to spiral, you must get out of the bed entirely. Move to a different, dimly lit space, sit in a chair, read something slow and paper-based, and return to the bed only when your eyelids are genuinely physically closing on their own. This is intensely uncomfortable in the early weeks, but it is the process working precisely as designed. The second tool involves managing what researchers call homeostatic sleep pressure. Chronic insomnia causes most people to compensate by sleeping in, napping, or spending excessive hours in bed hoping to capture whatever rest they can. This fragmented approach destroys the natural biological pressure that would otherwise make sleep irresistible. Keeping a consistent early wake time, even after poor nights, builds a wave powerful enough to overwhelm even an activated nervous system. And when the physical conditions are right, the final and most important shift becomes possible, changing your fundamental relationship with wakefulness itself. The single most counterproductive thing you can do when you wake at 2 in the morning is immediately and catastrophically panic about the fact that you are awake. The desperate fear of insomnia is the most combustible fuel in the entire cycle. The moment you look at the clock with dread and fury, you confirm to your nervous system that this moment is a genuine emergency, requiring an emergency response. The anxiety about the sleeplessness becomes more disruptive than the sleeplessness itself. The clinical technique called paradoxical intention inverts this dynamic completely. It requires actively, genuinely giving yourself unconditional permission to remain awake, not as a trick, but as genuine, embodied acceptance of the present moment exactly as it is. When your eyes open in the quiet dark, instead of calculating what you're losing, try treating your wakeful mind the way you would treat a close and distressed friend who appeared at your door in the middle of the night in genuine crisis. You would not scream at them to stop feeling what they are feeling. You would bring them inside, sit with them, listen patiently and without judgment, and simply be present with it without promising to fix anything. Offer that same compassionate attention to your own sleepless mind. Let the anxious thoughts arrive and be witnessed without immediately arguing them into silence. Tell yourself quietly that if you do not sleep another minute tonight, your body will rest in the stillness, and that is genuinely enough. This is not passivity. This is the hardest, most actively compassionate act you can perform for yourself in the dark. There is one final thing that deserves to be said, carefully and without romanticism. The mind that stays awake in the dark, carrying its full emotional weight into the long, quiet hours because it has nowhere else to put it, is not a broken mind. It is frequently a deeply sensitive, highly observant, richly connected mind, operating in an environment that offers almost no space for genuine internal processing. The same nervous system that overloads at 2 in the morning is the system that makes you immediately aware when someone in the room is hurting. You cannot selectively mute a nervous system. The frequencies that cause you pain in the dark are the same frequencies that give you depth in the light. You deserve sleep. You deserve rest. You deserve to lie down in a dark room and feel your mind genuinely release its grip on the day. But the journey towards sustainable sleep is not a journey toward a quieter or less feeling version of yourself. It is a journey toward a self that has learned slowly and with patience to carry its inner life differently, to process as it goes rather than banking everything for the midnight audit, to offer itself the same genuine compassion it extends so readily to everyone else. The next time you find yourself staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, try to meet it not with frustration and shame, but with honest curiosity. What is this restless, extraordinary mind of yours actually trying to say, now that the noise has finally stopped long enough for it to speak? What is the one thought, the one memory, the one fear that always finds you in the quietest part of the night? Leave it in the comments below. There is something profoundly important that happens when you give voice to what usually only lives in silence. You're not the only one awake at 2 in the morning doing that desperate mental math, not by a very long distance. If this reached something true in you, consider subscribing to this channel. Every week, we go carefully and honestly into the territory that usually only gets visited alone in the dark. Rest well, whenever it finally comes to you. And remember, the quiet is not empty. It has been listening to you all along.